there was a survey taken by IBCCES of 1,000 special needs parents, and what they found was 87% don't travel, and of those, 93% of those would travel if they knew where to go and what to do. So one of the reasons that they don't travel is they're scared of what people are going to think about them, and they're afraid they're going to be thought of as bad parents when their children melt down, and people are going to think the child is a brat, instead of just having a sensory meltdown. So long section of the book with how to handle that. But the key is to just, your number one priority is your child, and who cares what anybody thinks. Deal with the child, bring the child into a quiet place and give them food or whatever techniques you use to calm them down, because that's all you have to worry about, really.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're going to be talking travel, all things travel, with Dawn Barclay. Dawn, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing well. Yourself?
Great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. And the first thing we always like to do, Dawn, is learn about the guest that's joining us today. So we'll start by asking, who is Dawn Barclay?
It changes by the day. I got to tell you, sometimes she writes fiction. Sometimes she writes nonfiction. Sometimes she's a size 2. Sometimes she's a size 16. I really, I look in the mirror every day to figure out who I am. But basically, I am the daughter of 2 travel agents who owned a big agency in Manhattan and a couple of branches. And I've traveled since I was 2. And I have worked in all aspects of the travel industry, as well as 34 years on and off as a travel trade reporter. So I've written as a senior editor or contributing editor for 4 major travel trades. Right now, I'm a contributing editor for Insider Travel Report. I'm the mother of 2. And when they were born, there were certain aspects of their personalities that did not make them conducive for the traveling life I had led previous to their birth. They were a little anxious and inflexible. And I looked for a book that could help me, because I am of a mind that there's a book for everything. I got pregnant. I thought, no problem, I'll read a book. Doesn't work. So there was no book for this. And so I started researching it. And I spoke to some leaders in autism and in ADHD. I spoke to Dr. Tony Atwood. I spoke to Dr. Ellen Littman. And then I kind of hit a wall, because there were not a lot of people to interview in the early 2000s. And I couldn't stand on a street corner and say, who has autism? So it wasn't until a group called IBCCES created a designation called the Certified Autism Travel Professional designation that I knew how I could write the book, because there were all these wonderful people to interview who had had training, and many were special needs parents themselves. And they introduced me to their clients. And there was a lot more information on the web in 2019 than there was in 2000. And thanks to a little thing called a pandemic, I had 2 years with nowhere to go. So I had plenty of time to write it.
Yeah,
that's who I am.
Oh, I love it. And especially somebody like you who's used to traveling.
Yeah.
That 2 years must have felt like a lifetime, right?
I still haven't left. Every time I had to turn down a trip to Fiji. I had a press trip to Fiji I was offered, and I had to turn it down because we had some medical issues at home. It's like, but it's Fiji. So yeah, this has not been, great for me mentally.
Now, I guess I have a couple questions just about travel in general. So do you have a favorite travel destination? And if it's different, do you have a favorite travel destination with family?
With family, definitely Woodloch Pines in the Poconos. There's tons of things to do. There's lots of family activities. There's sort of like game show type competitions. And my husband and I are very competitive. So instead of competing with each other, we can compete against other families. So definitely love Woodloch Pines. For me personally, oh my God. There are a lot of places for different reasons. I love Tahiti. and Bora Bora. I love Venice. I love Paris. I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of wonderful places. So yeah, I have a lot.
Oh, that's so nice. It's interesting. A family of 6, 4 kids here. We have not been on a plane with all of them because that is just the cost, right? So when we do travel a lot. It's everywhere we go, we drive, whether it's in the States or in Canada here. But it's interesting because we haven't really gone anywhere like most people. But back in March, we did our first hotel stay since the pandemic. And it was with all 6 of us in one room. And guess what? It was not as enjoyable as I had pictured.
You're kidding. It wasn't
Right?
wonderful.
Because, hey, the last time we did this, everybody was way younger, pretty much in the same sleep schedule. Right.
Yeah.
And when you're in that hotel room, it's like lights off at the same time, whether you have the 5-year-old or a 13-year-old. And just the space. So we personally, like when we travel, we do have a timeshare that we're able to use really all over the world. And so we're used to like almost like a condo style where there is more room and there's more space. You can prepare your own meals, which
Yes.
as we know is good, cost effective, and it's good for kids, who want that set routine, right? But
Yeah.
I guess the reason why I bring that all up is because we have this picture in our mind that vacation is going to be like just at night when our 5-year-old was like so overtired. So he was starting to scream. Then the other kids are telling him to be quiet. And I'm like, guys, everybody on this floor is people we know from my son's basketball team. Like, please, please quiet, right? So in that moment, it wasn't that enjoyable. So I'm excited to talk to you because I know you're going to be able to be real and bring that reality of traveling with children and how to sort of balance that.
Yeah. First, my condolences. That sounds like just something I would not want to do.
Right?
So you're a very brave woman. This is why it's so great that you have a timeshare, because the first thing I was thinking is you have to look for these residential hotels that you could have a 2-bedroom suite and or an Airbnb or
Right.
something similar where you can have a place to spread out.
Yeah.
Because it is hard. And a lot of the parents that I spoke to, they would even say we make sure that there's a balcony wherever we go so that we have a place to go and talk while the children are trying to sleep. So absolutely, you're right with the kitchenette. Always recommend having a kitchen. Not only does it save money and you can cook the foods you want, but also there's so much stress involved in restaurant eating with all the waiting, that there's lots of different strategies to kind of deal with that. But when you have your own kitchen, it takes care of a lot of that. And I actually even have a checklist of how to vet a vacation rental and the things you should look for if you're traveling with someone on the spectrum or with mood and attention disorders. So yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with people realizing that even the happiest place on earth, there's no guarantee. So I don't think you can put that kind of pressure on yourself that this vacation is going to be perfect. Everything is trial and error. And I always advise, like, one of the things you could have done ahead of time, everybody sleep in the same room for one night to see where those hiccups might come and where the triggers might come. So you could have maybe devised a strategy. And I know that doesn't sound very easy, but neither is what you went through. So
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things I recommend is to stay at a friend's or relative's house for a night with your child or children and see where those triggers lie, because you might find that they need the sheets and the blankets from home with the texture they're used to and the smell they're used to, or the toiletries from home, or maybe bringing a fan along to drown out the noise from the hallway, because it's not like at home where there's no noise. Well, at your house, there's probably noise in the hallway. Mine, there wasn't. So whole new world with 4 kids,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. But yeah, starting small, and really there's no such thing as over preparing. So charting out every part of the vacation, from leaving the door to coming home, and figuring out where your triggers are going to be and how you're going to deal with them. Since a lot of the travelers I'm writing for have sensory issues, so they can't deal with crowds or with smells or with lots of noise or with bright lights. So those are things to always consider.
Mhm. And it's interesting, right? Because we know that children thrive on routine, and then dealing with, if you do have a child on the spectrum, I have heard that that is even more important for them, right?
Yeah.
So now you're taking them out of their regular environment, and yes, on a vacation, but still you want to make sure that they have a lot of the routine still in place, because I'm sure that will help with, their stress, their enjoyment levels can, they can still enjoy their time as well. So you saying that about like making sure maybe some similar toiletries and, all the way down to the bed sheets, that would be a benefit to them.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, the thing is that every child, when they're taken out of their comfort zone, becomes anxious and inflexible. So that's why a
Hmm.
lot of these tips work for neurotypical children as well.
Yeah.
But some of the things you can do to reduce that anxiety of unpredictability and the unknown is to preview the vacation ahead of time through video that you can find on
Yep.
YouTube or offered by the supplier. So a child sees, this is where we're going to check into the hotel. This is what our room's going to look like. This is what the restaurant looks like. This is the menu for the restaurant. What will you eat? So when they're actually there, they can say, oh, it's just like we saw on the video. And it's much less stressful. I mean, you can't rule out everything happening. But like on car trips, you say you do a lot by car. If your child is always sleeping during the day, great time to travel during the day while they're asleep. If they're sleeping at night, maybe you break it up and do some activities during the day, and one of you drives at night, or swap off. And then always have like little prizes to break up the routine. I'm big on bribery, so little prizes. See, I'm a nutcase. My therapist was like, don't bribe your children. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Hey, there is a time and place. We're not going to deny that.
So there's some thought about whether you're going to have toys in the seat pocket in front of them to reach for, or if you want to hand them back to them. Again, it's always going to depend on your child. I'm not big on letting children have sucking candies when you can't get at them. I was a nutcase about that. But lots of electronics to keep them busy. Again, there is no such time as limited screen time when you're traveling. It's like traveling is a different aspect, a different animal than when you're at home. Let them watch all the screen time they want. It's going to keep things quiet.
Exactly.
You are going to get so many complaint letters.
Oh, man. But you know what? It's interesting because our kids know the same thing, right? We've done this a few times. We drive out to my brother's cottage, which is like 4+ hours away, and we've mastered the drive for the most part. But guess what? Things always come up. It's like everybody has their own headphones.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You don't want to, and Brian does the majority of the driving. You don't want to be listening to all the kids' noises and their games that they're playing, right? If he's stuck driving, he wants to be able to listen to what he wants to listen to. So,
Yes.
make sure everybody's electronics are charged and all that kind of stuff. But I agree. It's like sort of survival of the fittest when you are traveling, whether by plane or car, what have you. And then when you get there, and they know, and you remind them even like, okay, we're going to be there within the next hour. And guess what? By the time they get there, they don't want to be on the electronics anymore anyways.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've spent their time and now they want to explore.
Yeah. And there's lots of games that you can play in the car. And I list some of those. So things like that are very helpful. I include lots of tips for getting through that long drive. And you mentioned making sure everything's charged. Also bring backup batteries.
Planning of excursions and the events that you're going to do, right? Like we sometimes have an idea in mind, and we have learned that if you actually don't plan out, if you are gone for a full week at a timeshare and you don't plan out the week, you end up missing things. So you look at their calendar of events that they have, and it's like, okay, Monday, oh geez, that passed at 10 o'clock and now it's 2. And sorry kids, you won't be able to go do that arts and crafts session, right? So planning out ahead of time, I think, is important as well. And if the kids are older, letting them take a look and help with that, because I think, they take ownership too of that trip.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of really important points. One, you'd really do have to have a schedule in place. You can create a visual schedule for children on the spectrum so they can have pictures instead of writing to let them know what's going to happen. And it's important to preview all those activities to make sure that even offer the child the choice of what they want to do, all pre-approved by you. And so there's no wrong answer, and let them have that buy-in. So you're absolutely right about that. The pacing is important, though, and you can't squeeze 4 or 5 things into a day. So it might be great to look at this schedule and see what you want to do, but you should plan for a lot of downtime so that kids can decompress. If you have children, even if you don't have children on the spectrum, I think kids just like spending time by the pool or watching TV. That's what they find enjoyable a lot of times.
Right.
So create time for that as well. Another thing is to, when you're planning those activities, children on the spectrum, many of them have passions that they might spend 26 hours a week talking about. And so it's great to have a trip or revolve around some of those passions. So if you have a kid that loves dinosaurs, maybe you want to go to a destination that has a dinosaur museum or two, and have that be the highlight of the vacation, because they'll spend half the time looking forward to it and the other half of the time talking about it after the fact. So you've made everybody really happy. And if they've got something that's specific for them, it's going to make the more mundane parts of the trip more bearable, because they're just looking forward to that special thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the pool as well. The one thing that is great about the pool is it really helps when it comes to bedtime. It really tires them out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's also great. Kids on the spectrum, it's really good sensory. That sensation's really good for them. So yeah, water therapy is a wonderful thing. And if you can seek out a hotel that has both kitchenettes and a pool, half the work is done for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I want to talk about the book some. So, you said this was a resource that you wish was around, earlier on for you. I guess based on the research that you've done and some of the common things that you learned from parents and these now the newly accredited travel experts.
Yeah.
What do you think was, looking back, probably some of the more valuable things that you wish you would have known, or you wish you would have been able to even share with others?
Yeah, I didn't do any of these things when I was traveling with my kids. Honestly, I did everything wrong, and they'd be the first to tell you. So I pretty much everything would have been, I'm doing the research and I'm listening to these people and saying, yeah, that would have been great to do. Yeah, I mean, we didn't go to Europe until my kids were about 18. And we did a lot of kids clubs, and one of my children did not like kids clubs. We found out after the fact. Yeah, and that was unfortunate. But yeah, there were a lot of surprises just in the writing of the book in general, and a lot of tips that I would have not thought of. Like, for example, when you're going on the airplane, bring something. If you have a child that likes pressing buttons, bring a toy that has buttons on it so they don't press the call attendant's buttons the whole time. Make sure you have gum, because if you have a child who has pressure problems, there's going to be a lot of screaming involved. My husband developed, it was a wonderful thing. I had one child who had just vomited on me, and too late for me to get up and leave or change. And I had another child screaming from the pressure, and my husband took out the barf bag, the vomit bag, and crayons, and created barf bag theater. So he's having these characters talk to each other, and it fascinated the kids, and it got us through. So I think that the key to that is always use humor, because it helps. Some of the other things I found that were interesting was that individual sports vacations are very helpful, because if you have people that are on the spectrum and people who are not, everybody can enjoy the vacation. So whether you go to a dude ranch and you get involved with horseback riding, or you do golf, skiing, or scuba diving, all of those have therapeutic elements for the child. And there are places that have adaptive sports for you. And then everybody who's not on the spectrum and is neurotypical can enjoy the holiday as well. There are also certified autism centers, also certified by IBCCES, which have people who are specially trained to help you if you have children on the spectrum or with attention and mood disorders. So, look through the book and find those places, because you're going to have another set of hands to help you.
Excellent. Now, just for those who, I guess, maybe don't have the experience, what are some of the reasons why somebody, parents of a child who's on the spectrum what are some of the reasons that they may not travel? Like you mentioned some, you mentioned some right there, just
Oh,
from the.
yeah. You mean if you don't like vomit all over you? No.
Yeah,
Really? Are there people who don't love that? Yeah. So there was a survey taken by IBCCES of 1,000 special needs parents, and what they found was 87% don't travel, and of those, 93% of those would travel if they knew where to go and what to do. So one of the reasons that they don't travel is they're scared of what people are going to think about them. And they're afraid they're going to be thought of as bad parents when their children melt down, and people are going to think the child is a brat, instead of just having a sensory meltdown. So long section of the book with how to handle that. But the key is to just, your number one priority is your child, and who cares what anybody thinks. Deal with the child, bring the child into a quiet place and give them food or whatever techniques you use to calm them down, because that's all you have to worry about, really. But other people do other things. And so interesting to read about that. But they also, like I said, don't know where to go. And a lot of people don't know about these certified autism travel professionals who know all the places you can go that are autism friendly or certified. And there are entire cities that are getting certified. So you've got Mesa, Arizona. The tourist board got the training to become a certified autism center, and then got everybody else in the act. So if you're in Mesa and you want to go to a restaurant or a museum or an attraction or hotel, chances are they've had the training and are set up to help you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I think it's just all about, like you said, doing that research, right? And if there's some worries for families, like, I'm just thinking about us. I remember, like, absolutely not. I'm not going to bring my child on an airplane just because you go on and you see, that mom who comes on with her baby and you're like, oh, here we go. Right. And then you add in the cost to it all. But maybe it's starting with, okay, instead of something like that, maybe we start with a drive 4 hours away. And where can we go for that? If, as a parent, you're having some anxiety about how your child's going to react, right? Yep. And then keeping that trip simple, and then maybe working your way up.
Starting small. You want to try a camping trip, set up a tent in your backyard for a night and see how that goes. And camping trips are a nice, less expensive way to segue into travel. Even a trip to a local aquarium or zoo can be called a tour. And then you've created a good frame of reference and a happy memory, hopefully, for when you do take a longer tour. Even a trip to a flea market or a garage sale can be labeled as a scavenger hunt. I mean, you can turn into fun, and you can go to restaurants with different cuisine and experience a little bit about make sure you have some food with you that the child will eat, because they may not be so adventurous. They'll be more adventurous if there's something they know they can eat, but trying different things and bringing the world closer that way, starting small.
Yeah.
And I think the planning element that you mentioned earlier is a big one too. So just again, looking back to some personal experience, when you're at a place where they have all of these scheduled, structured activities, and you tell a child, okay, we're going to do this, and then you look at the agenda and like, oh, okay, we actually missed that, right? For us, I know that's resulted in, and not necessarily with this would apply to a neurotypical child as well, but it can really be problematic for at least at a minimum the rest of that day. You lied to me.
Well, you have to be on top of this. I'm sorry, but that was on you.
Yeah, exactly. We have learned, let's just say that before we say anything now, it's like, let's make sure that this is available, and there's space that we can get into and all that kind of stuff, because yes, we have learned the hard way when it comes to planning.
Yeah, but also you could have a backup plan and say, this is plan A, but if we miss this is going to be plan B. So at least the plan B has been previewed, and your own sleep habits and scheduling habits. If you're not going to be up at 9, maybe you don't plan something at 9, Exactly. Give yourself a break and base it on what you're typically going to do, because you're not going to become a whole new person just because you're out of town.
Right. And it's a vacation. It's supposed to be enjoyable, right? So
yeah. So they tell me.
And you know what? It's interesting, because I remember the first time we went away for a full week. We didn't have all 4 kids. It was the 3. And I left and I was like, oh my goodness, I think I'm more exhausted than before I left, right? Because during that week, we didn't travel with anybody else. And at home in a week, at least once, there's like a babysitter called in or something, right? So that whole week I was on. And what I realized after, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start taking the day off, like the Monday off after. Kids, bye, back to school you go. And I'm just taking that day off just to sort of recover, because literally it's, unless if you are doing like a kids program or something, it's the parents are on all the time. And if you do have younger children or, children that need your attention more, it ends up being one of those like, okay, that really, I don't feel rested coming back as a parent.
Yeah. So some people, they'll go to the places with kids clubs, like say beaches in Turks and Caicos or in Jamaica, and take advantage of that. Or they'll take a cruise, where the 5 major cruise lines do have programs for the children on the spectrum. But what some other people do is they either travel with family members or with a babysitter with them. I know it costs more, but you know what? If everything's going to be a loss for you because you're not having a good time, maybe it's worth spending a little bit more to bring somebody along to take care of the kids some of the time. You can also hire a destination sitter where you are. And many of them have been, you want to go through ones that have been vetted to work with people on the spectrum. And I list some companies in the book that do that. Because you need some time on your own. You absolutely do. It's your vacation too. So you should make plans for that.
Yeah. So after we did that once, then we started traveling with friends.
Yeah.
And then it was, what we did, we would switch off. So like there was one day where we took all the kids and then we would switch. And then one evening where we did that. So there was a little bit of downtime for both sets of parents.
That's perfect. And if you're traveling with friends, there's not really a lot of extra expense, because they were going to pay their own way anyway. So you're not paying for them. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's that time where you're taking on all of these extra kids, making sure that you plan your traveling partners correctly. The kids enjoy each other's company. So it's almost a bit of a break for you at that point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good idea.
Now, okay. So just focusing on the book a little bit more, and I'm just going to pop the title up here just so everybody can see it now. The book isn't available yet, unless of course you're watching this after August 15th, 2022. The book is now available if it's after that date. But as of today, it is available for pre-order. So can you just talk to us again a bit more about the book and how we can get our hands on it?
Yes. So I interviewed over 100 people for this book. I don't want people to think it's my story. It's totally not my story. But I researched very extensively, and I broke it up into different aspects of travel, and then what you do when you get there, as in where you stay, choices of where to stay, even including things like dude ranches and houseboats, and then what to do when you get there, from touring to special interest museums to resorts and museums and that sort of thing. So it is available at all major booksellers. If you go to any bookstore online, you can find it, but you can also find it on the Rowman and Littlefield website, and you can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and anywhere you typically buy books. But what I would ask, if you're listening, is ask your library to get a copy or two, because then it's available to people who can't afford it. It's 344 pages, and if it opens up the world to you in any way, my email address is in the book. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you found strategies that I haven't thought about, or you found places that I haven't included, then write to me. I have a website called travelingdifferent.com. It has one L for traveling. And you might find your story up on the blog, because I'll be updating the book on there.
Okay, excellent. So you interviewed over 100 people. So who were some of the people that, and again, you've mentioned some of the different backgrounds, but who were some of the people that you interviewed for, when you're doing your research for this book?
The certified autism travel planners were a big part of it. And they were excellent. And when you read the book, you'll see that I sort of leaned on some of them more than others, because some of them had so many ideas that were brilliant. And so I'm not going to mention any particular names, but you'll get an idea that there were definitely 5 or 6 certified autism travel professionals that I really leaned on that were excellent. I list how to get a hold of them in the back of the book, as well as bios for everybody that I spoke to.
Nice.
And then also lists of organizations that can help you if you've just found out that your child is on the spectrum or has various invisible disabilities. There are people who can help you, and I list those as well.
I think that's great in regards to having those resources there, because if you are a parent, of a child who is neurodiverse, just knowing, okay, we want to go away, but we want it to be enjoyable for everybody. So almost looking at this list of, okay, these are all places we can go. Our child can feel comfortable. If as parents, we're feeling a little bit anxious about, like you said, maybe what others may feel or think, this is a list that at least they can start with and go through there, instead of them having to try to figure out and start calling and emailing all these places. It's like one less thing for them to do when it comes to planning a trip, which we know takes a long time. So I think that's amazing that, you've already done that legwork for all these families, right?
Yes. What I try to do is, I'd say the book is about 85% strategies you can use and 15% places you can go, because you do have the certified autism travel professionals to help you find a place. And these places change. The certifications change. Some places have moved. So I always encourage people, if you see a place listed, first of all, find out what the designation means. Because if I have autism friendly AF in parentheses, that can mean a lot of different things to different suppliers. Do your due diligence, call, find out what it means. And if it's right for your child, there's a reason it's called the spectrum. And that's because all children are different. What works for one might not work for another. And verify all the information. And just make sure that if they have, say, a sensory afternoon at a museum, make sure that it's offered on the afternoon that you're in town, because some places have one once a month and it might not be when you're there. So I do encourage people to do their due diligence. It's really important.
For sure.
Now, in the writing process, was there anything that kind of surprised you as you were learning all of this information?
Yeah, I didn't realize how many people I were going to have to get signatures from to say it was okay to use their. When you're writing fiction, this is my 8th book. I've been writing fiction up to now, even though I've had a travel column forever. And then the publisher said, yeah, we have to have releases for everybody you spoke to. And then we have to have releases from everywhere you've quoted from a publication online. And I was like, this is as much work as writing the book. So, yeah. And then another thing was begging the editor to let me change things up into the last minute because things were changing. And I was like, but this is no longer a certified autism center. What do I do without screwing up the entire index? And it's like, these are the little things that you really don't have in fiction.
But hey, the good news is at least everybody reading knows everything that you've said is validated.
Oh, yeah.
And true. And what you see is what you get. So there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's like a 10-page bibliography and the notes section is like 9 pages. This is a lot of work. But you don't really care about that. Just read the book and enjoy it. Don't worry about poor me.
So, but no, that's a really interesting point, because that was going to be my next question. Like, how is writing this book different than anything else you've written? But that's
the main difference is that nobody dies in this book.
Well, that's a good thing.
I write psychological thrillers and I write romantic suspense, and sometimes there's a little kink in them too. There's no kink in this book. Nobody dies. All ends happily. Very different. If you read my other books, you're going to see a big difference.
Oh man, no, it's like what you see is what you get, and here's the information. Take it and go with it. Don't leave it. Just take it and go and learn. Yeah. I think the greatest thing is that it's just a reminder and also an encouragement too, because I think some families, if you get a diagnosis and stuff and you think, okay, well, life is going to be maybe different, not as we had originally thought, but it's also, and I'm being sensitive because we're not living per se in it, but just from friends that I see and I talk with, that we just shift, we just change it up a little bit, right? So maybe Disney World Disneyland, whatever you want to call it, isn't the first place you're going to take your child, because the overstimulation, right, is going to be too much. But you can still take your child and let them experience a trip together as a family.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you don't get to have those experiences.
Or you know that you're going to be doing a place like that differently.
Right.
Yeah. Well, theme parks absolutely have gotten on the bandwagon, and a lot of them have gotten certified. They have special programs so you can skip the lines. There are sensory quiet places. You can get a map that'll tell you where on the property you can decompress. Some children love amusement parks. Those that love high stim love amusement parks. Others do not want to have anything to do with that. So you know your child, but if you do have a child that loves that kind of high stim, you can go to Disney. You can go to Legoland, Sesame Place, Six Flags, SeaWorld. I mean, SeaWorld even has placards that'll tell you what the smells are like as you go past a certain spot. People have really gotten on the bandwagon to try to be inclusive. So it doesn't mean you have to rule it out, but it does mean you may do things differently by finding out what programs are available for you as the parent of a child that might be neurodiverse.
I love that. It's just like there's these options are coming out and are available, which is great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, no, and the other thing too that you said was just, this applies to someone who's neurotypical as well. So I think, just speaking from the experience, I could kind of share what you shared earlier. We didn't do a lot of these things, and had we done a lot of these things, our vacations in the past would have looked very different, and probably would have been a lot more enjoyable for everyone.
Me too. Me too.
Now we got to plan a trip. Oh man,
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. This was a really good conversation, and I know the book's not out till August, but just knowing and planning for summer vacations and the tips that you've already provided and suggested for everybody listening, I think it will be great. And then to have the book and be able to continue reading for the next trip, even better.
Yeah, it's great for your fall and holiday travel as well. And
Yes.
when you get back home this summer and you think about all the things that went wrong, even another reason to order it in August, because next year there's still hope.
Yeah, there you go. You can do it better next time around.
You're such an easy laugh. I love talking to you.
No, you're a very enjoyable person to talk to. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
All right. So Dawn, we had the website listed, Traveling Different, like you said, with one L, travelingdifferent.com. How else can we connect with you? Are there any other social media platforms you're on? What should we know?
I'm on Facebook as Traveling Different. I'm on Twitter as Traveling Diff with 2 F's because they wouldn't let me fit the whole word in. I'm in Instagram with Traveling_Different, though I almost never on Instagram. I do not like Instagram. So sorry, Instagram, not my thing. I stuck a book trailer on TikTok, but I'm never on there.
Well, if you have like a publicist or like a social media person, they're happy for you on that. But I get it. It can become a little bit overwhelming.
I think the key takeaway there is go to Facebook and
I love Facebook and go to my blog on Traveling Different, because that's where I'll update. But also, anytime I see an article about people traveling different, whether it's for physical or invisible disability, I copy it onto both Facebook and Twitter. So absolutely, you want to follow me on those 2 places so you can keep up to date on changes for the book and things that are not included in the book.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Dawn. This was a great conversation, and we love laughing. We love enjoying good conversation. So that mixed together, perfect way to spend the time.
So thank you. I'm scared what this is going to look like when I watch it again, because I'm not usually this flippant. You just got me on one of those days.
I love it. I'm glad we did.
No, this has been great. Again, thanks again, Dawn,
Thank you.
For everyone who listened or watched. Thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.